Well everyone, you might be looking at the Google Pixel 9 and the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6 and you might be trying to figure out which particular phone you want to go ahead and buy. Now here's the thing, in my personal opinion, both of these phones are very good options for the most part, but here's the thing, I definitely do think with the Google Pixel 9, this might be the better phone for the average person, just because it's not going to be a phone that's going to be super hard to use. And probably for the average person, you won't really feel like you're having to go through and find a phone or use a phone that's going to be impossible to use for the most part. With the Flip 6, this is a very, it's not the hardest phone to use in the world, but compared to the Google Pixel 9, I would definitely say the Flip 6 is probably the easier one. I would probably say the Flip 6 is probably the one that's going to be a little bit harder, but it's still understandable. The Pixel 9 is a beautiful phone as well. If you want to pick up either one of these phones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these phones, with the Google Pixel 9 and the Galaxy Flip 6, they're designed a little differently. The Flip 6 on the front is giving you a 6.7-inch foldable dynamic LTPO AMOLED display, and it's a very good panel. The cover display is a 3.4-inch Super AMOLED display, so that one is 60Hz, but the front one, the main one, you're going to use 120Hz, and that's a pretty good panel. It's just an interesting panel because it is a foldable one, so that's what kind of ends up happening when you're going to go through and use these types of phones, just because these are like foldable types of displays. So that right there is a fairly big thing to kind of understand here. And I do think if you're going to go and pick up a phone, you have to be okay with using this phone in this type of way. So keep that in mind. I know it's kind of an interesting thing, but if you're okay with the flipping mechanism, then that's totally okay. But if you're not, well then this might be a big reason why you may not want to go ahead and buy that phone for the most part. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. On the Google Pixel 9 though, this is just one display and it's a 6.3-inch OLED display. It's 2700 nits of brightness, 120Hz, 1080p, and it's a good panel. I do think it's a pretty good panel if you're going to use it on an everyday basis. That's something I like a lot about these types of phones, right? The Pixel series, good displays, definitely not like the best panel of all time, but it definitely is a decent panel when it comes down to it. And I do think that's a really nice thing going on for this type of phone. So that right there, once again, one of those things to kind of keep in mind there for the most part. Also with the Google Pixel 9, it's a flat display, so it's not like a foldable display like on the Galaxy Flip 6. The build qualities of the rest though are kind of similar. You're basically getting USB Type-C ports on the bottom, flat sides on both all throughout. On the back side, you're getting a frosted glass back on the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6. Whereas on the Google Pixel 9, it's a standard glass back. And I probably will tell you from that side as well, the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6, I like the frosted glass back. The display is on the other half of the phone, so it's not the biggest deal in the world again, but just again, if you're going to pick up a phone, it is a good type of, build quality. The Google Pixel 9, I like a lot. I feel like this is just an easier phone to use. It's also a smaller phone, but if you like the flip thing, then by all means, go ahead and pick up a phone like that. I think it makes a lot of sense to go and buy a phone like that as well in some cases. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. Now from a price tag standpoint, before we go into the camera side, the price tag is a little bit differently here. So on the Galaxy Flip 6, this is a phone that was like $1,099. On the Google Pixel 9, this is like an $800 phone. So there is like a couple $100 difference here from this particular perspective. Keep in mind though, with something like the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6, this phone has already been out for a little bit of time. So you're probably going to see more degradation from a battery perspective. So you're probably going to see more depreciation from a price tag perspective on the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6. So kind of keep that in mind, but I think the Google Pixel 9, is going to hit there at some point. But as of right now, that's kind of what you're getting from from that particular side. So again, not the biggest deal in the world, but just one of those small things to keep in mind there as well. Now moving on from from the price tag standpoint to the camera standpoint, this is also something that's interesting because they're both like fairly similar when it kind of comes down to it. So they're both giving you wide and ultra wide cameras, which is really nice. Basically almost the same type of megapixel count, although the ultra-wide camera on the Google Pixel 9 is a higher megapixel count. 4K at 60 on the front and the back of both of these, which is nice to have. And the thing I will probably tell you from a camera perspective on both these phones is the fact that with a phone like the Google Pixel 9, this is a phone that I think is just going to be more easier to use and easier to manage. And what I mean by that is with a phone like the Google Pixel 9, this is one of those types of devices that's just going to be an easier phone to use just because you don't have so many different I think it's just a better camera kind of in some cases, but Samsung always does a really good job with their cameras. And I would say from a consistency perspective, from the quality of the cameras and everything like that, I might just have to say that the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6 is probably the better camera when it comes down to it. I like the Google Pixel 9 because the front camera is an ultra-wide camera versus the Galaxy Galaxy Flip 6's wide angle camera. But other than that, I think if you're going to go ahead and pick up a phone and use it on like an everyday basis, kind of the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6 probably makes the most amount of sense to go ahead and, use from a camera perspective. That is something I like a lot about that type of phone, and that's something, for the duration of time for the future. You're going to go and buy a phone and basically have a good, experience from the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6, but also from the Google Pixel 9 as well. Like, you can't go wrong with either one, but I probably would say that the Flip 9 is probably, or the Flip 6 is probably going to be giving you the overall better camera here for the most part. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. Now, another thing to kind of keep in mind here too is the fact that the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6 and the Google Pixel 9 are both giving you basically software updates for a long duration of time. And that is something that I love a lot about both these types of phones. You're basically going to be getting a phone on the Flip 6 and on the Google Pixel 9 that's basically going to be giving you very long software updates. So that is something that I love a lot about both these phones. Like, if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, I love being able to go through and buy a phone that's going to be giving you software updates for the most part. So this is a beautiful thing. I love being able to go through and buy a phone for that. So this in and of itself is a very, very nice thing. The Pixel 9 though has a higher likelihood probably of lasting for a longer period of time. So we're going to have to kind of see what ends up happening there. And that's kind of what ends up, you have to kind of keep in mind when you're using a phone. But I'd probably tell you with the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6, you're still getting a very long lasting phone here as well. So kind of keep that in mind when it kind of comes down to it as well. Now, from a performance perspective, this is probably the biggest difference here because we are having completely different chipsets in both these phones. And that's just kind of what ends up happening when you're going through and buying these types of phones. You're going to be getting a phone inside of the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6 that is giving you that Tensor, basically the latest Tensor G4 chipset inside. On the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6, you're getting that Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chipset inside with 12 gigabytes of RAM. Where on the Google Pixel 9 side, you're getting that Google Tensor G4 chipset inside with 12 gigabytes of RAM as well. So different chipsets with the same amount of RAM. And here's the thing, right? On the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6 side, I feel like this performance on that phone is fairly good, right? It's a fairly good performing device. There's really not that much to complain about here from that particular device's perspective. And I do think if you're going to go and buy a phone, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 inside the Flip 6 is easily one of the better types of devices you can probably buy. It's one of the fastest phones out in the market, and that is something that I love a lot about that type of phone. So on something like the Samsung Galaxy Flip 6, definitely a better type of performing phone when it kind of comes down to it. On the Google Pixel 9 though, this is still a fairly fast phone, right? This is a very, very fast phone. I've tested it against a lot of the competition, and I'm still seeing a lot of capability behind something like a Samsung Galaxy Flip 6 and the Google Pixel 9. But I probably would tell you from a performance perspective, the Flip 6 is probably better, but I think the Pixel 9 is still a very fast phone. It's still very good. I just happen to like the Tensor chipsets, probably not as much as something like the Snapdragon chipsets when it kind of comes down to it. So from that side as well, that kind of covers it up there too. So to kind of cover it up, what I'll definitely tell you is I love the Google Pixel 9 and I love the Galaxy Flip 6. I just think that the Flip 6 is probably not the most practical phone to use, and I think it probably makes more sense to go and buy something like a Google Pixel 9 rather than a Flip 6. But the Flip 6 has some advantages. I think the cameras are probably better. I think the performance is better as well. Otherwise, I think the Pixel 9 is probably the one I'd recommend probably a majority of people to go ahead and buy. So that kind of covers it up there as well. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.